Please familiarize yourself with the risk disclaimers involved. Never trade with money you cannot afford to lose. Trading while providing above average returns potentially can also provide above average risk. Do not invest money you cannot afford to lose. Hypothetical or simulated performance results do have certain limitations, such as not taking into account things like lack of liquidity. All information provided during this video is for educational and research purposes only. Thank you. Trading financial instruments of any kind, including options, futures, and securities, have potential rewards, but also large potential risks. You must be aware of the risks and be willing to accept them in order to invest in the options, futures, and stock markets. Don't trade with money you cannot afford to lose. Thank you for familiarizing yourself with our required government risk disclaimers. Boom. So we've got an indicator here, and it's the Flux Orion. Orion, like the belt of the famed constellation. And one of the things you get the sense of looking at it is the predictive nature of the tool is pretty awesome sauce. For example, if we just put a moving average on here, Jim, you're going to see that when you're taking longer term positions or options, calls, for example, in the direction of the trend, that the signals we're working with are fairly reliable in the sense that we know when to look for those pushes up, right, brother? So everywhere you see an orange line, for example, on my screen is a time that we were waiting for a buying pressure signal to arrive. Okay, and we'll just kind of come here and work our way forward. So now, Jim, looking at these signals, you'll see that there are these windows, right? And if you were looking for options plays, that these were times where most of the time you sort of see that push up, right? And in a rare instance, there's a failure. Push up, failure, push up. So most of the time we're dealing with a 70-80% prediction rate. And in the upper right corner, it's telling you when the next signals are coming from. Everybody got that so far? Makes sense? The tool can be deployed across a number of markets to look for the times where the market is most likely on an end of day schedule, where it's most likely to go up and sort of go down. So in CL, for example, you'll see that the last signal was predicted to be October 9th, and it is 5 days, 15 hours, 35 minutes, and 45 seconds until the next one of these red cycles. Okay, now it's important to keep in mind that there are two benefits to looking at time signals. One of those benefits, Jim, we've just looked at, is in terms of a release of vertical energy into the market. That is to say, when we arrive at that time, the market moves one direction or another. Okay? But what a lot of people overlook is the second half of time in regards to resistance. So these lines, for example, I'm going to make them a little thicker than they were a second ago. So I've increased the size of the lines. With me so far, everyone? Okay. Now, the guy who first figured this Shinola out is dead now. And I thank him for much of what I'm about to show you, because if I had to figure it out on my own, it would take a while. And so Knuckles, i.e. W.D. Gann, has a quote: "Don't have an epileptic seizure." Here we go. Slide show from current slide. Now, Jim, check this out. He says, by a study of the time periods and time cycles, you will learn why tops and bottoms are found at certain times. Now, take a look. We see tops and bottoms found at certain times. No way to argue against it. If you're Ray Charles, you can't see it. I can't blame you. If you're not Ray Charles, you can see it. There it is. Now, here's the second half. Why resistance levels are so strong at certain times. And now here's the key. Bottoms and tops hold around what? They hold around the resistance levels. The resistance levels of what? They hold around the resistance levels of the time cycles. And what we've learned, Jim, is that it's the closing price of the time cycle candle. Let me read it again. You will learn now by looking at the Flux Orion, you will learn why tops and bottoms are found at certain predictive times. And you'll also learn why resistance levels are so strong at the Orion price points, i.e. the close of the Orion candles, and you'll see tops and bottoms hold around that price in the future. So come with me back over here to the CL chart. Now, Jim, check it out. I'm going to go from a daily to a 60-minute chart. You with me so far? Let's work it slowly backwards. 60 to a 15. 15 to a 5. Okay, so Jim, you see how those lines are following us as we move backwards? Right there. Okay. Now, I'm going to teach you some juju, but I need you to understand a few things first before we go there. This is as tight as I can make it. Let me go to a 10. We'll get twice as many signals on there. Here we go. Bingo. Jim, I want you to look at what Gann said. Resistance levels so strong, bottoms and tops hold around them. Are we seeing bottoms and tops hold around the resistance levels of the time cycles that the Orion generated? Would you say that's an accurate statement? Or are we deluding ourselves? Living in a dream, man. Wake up. Do you see highs and lows forming around the green and red lines? How about the rest of you? What do you think? Quick vote of confidence. Okay. Now, here's the thing. And Earl, this is important for your force stuff. When we're working with time, Jim, time involves two dimensions. Most people think it's just kind of up and down. Time has two vectors. When there's a time cycle, Jim, there's a release of energy vertically or counter-vertically, up or down. But Jim, there's a shock wave that extends forward to the right. And that shock wave pushes energy into a price level. It builds a virtual trampoline, if you will. And so there are 6 rules of time in regards to this price space that we're working about. Number 1, let's show you here what we're going to look at. Boom, boom, boom. Number 1, we have to the tick touches. Number 2, we have miss by 1 tick touches. Number 3, we have wickiness near the lines. Number 4, we have consolidation between the lines. Number 5, respect of the 50% rule. Number 6, projection of last gap resistance memory. These are the 6 rules, the 6 laws of time resistance, the time price space. Okay, so what I look for, Jim, to verify if I'm looking at the correct lines, I want to see the behavior that I'm delineating for you here. Number one, I want to see places where it touches the line to the tick and bounces away. And so, Jim, over here, I'm looking back, and you see that little jimmy jabby right there? How it just kind of gracefully dinks it and moves away. How it gracefully dinks it and moves away. That tells me I'm close. And then, Jim, I want to see lines where it misses by one tick, like right here. Okay, these are commonplace. Okay. Now, I want to see wickiness near the lines. Jim, this is what I mean by wickiness. Not like the sound a rapper makes when he spins a record. Wicky, 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 wicky. This is what I mean by wicky. See that crap right there? Jim, it comes up to the line, and then there's like this push away. We can't be above it, and it pushes away. Like the pink line here is a hot plate. Does that make sense, brother? That's wickiness. Okay? Then you have consolidation between the levels. All we have to do is come down here. And Jim, this is what I mean by consolidation between the levels. So far, so good? Okay, now, here's where you will have mastery over something that took me 6 years to figure out. Listen to what I'm about to tell you. I'm going to teach this to a bunch of people who are paying $10,000 as part of a 2-day course. This is one element of 30 elements that they're going to learn and master. You need to master this because time has 2 dimensions, vertical and horizontal. And until you understand that, none of this works. Now, when you have 2 lines, I have 2 laws left. Respect of the 50% rule and projection of the last gap. You'll notice that there are spaces here, guys, where there's no lines, but there are pivots. You'll notice that there are spaces here where there are no lines, but Jim, it touched the line and moved away, right? Or it touched an imaginary line and moved away. There's wickiness, there's consolidation, there's all of those things, but there's no line here in the middle. Now, you're going to go in and grab your fib retracement tool, your Fibonacci retracement tool. And then, Jim, I want you to pull between the 2 lines and add your 50. See that there, turtleerds? I'm going to go ahead and make it a default. Now, Jim, you see what happens when I extend that line forward to the right? Something magical just took place. Do you see where CL is bouncing? Come with me and you'll see a world beyond imagination. Jim, you see right there? And right here? Right here? Right here, right here, right here, right here. Expectations. Now, it doesn't end there. You maniacs. As soon as that line exists, we can cut it. Now, guess what? Whatever you cut once, you can cut again. So over here, Jim, watch. I'm going to take that retracement and I'm going to add it a second time. Boom. Do you notice anything? Boom. Come back over. Do you see wickiness right here, Mr. Mayo? Wiki, 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 wiki. So the properties, do you see miss by 1 tick? Wiki, 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 wiki. Now, when you master this, you can do this with any timing signal. Any timing signal. You can do it with 60-minute open price lines with the warp. We can do it with daily cycle markers. We can do it with solar cycles. We can do it with SETI signals. There is nothing we can't apply this to when you understand the underlying technique. Okay, so Jim, over here I've got a big gap with pivots in the middle of it, bro, right? Let's go back and find the original lines. This green and this red line all the way back over here. See it? I don't have enough data, but watch. Green line, respect of the 50% rule. Cut it. Do you notice any bounces along the way at that level? Come back over with me. Do you see how it's starting to look like a ladder? The rungs are evenly spaced. Okay, now, this is on a 10-minute chart. Watch this crazy watch this crazy stuff. Jim, I'm coming down to a 5-minute, and then I was coming down to a 3-minute. Your eye will naturally start to see this stuff. Now look at that crap. Jim, they're like bars on a cage, right, man? And these are the size moves that you and Sweetness are looking for over at OTG, right? Big moves. 30 tick, 40 tick, 50 tick moves. So, the point of this story is you don't have to stop with one gap. But here's the other point. Ready? Jim, there's no lines above here, right? There's nothing. It's a white cat drinking milk in a snowstorm up there. Rule number 6. It says I can take the last known gap. The last known gap. You see that there, brother? From another mother? And Jim, look. I'm going to bring it up to here. Copy it again. Watch. Copy, paste. I'm going to bring it up to there. Jim, do you have little tinglies on your arms yet? I do. Wiki, 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 wiki. See the wickiness? You see the tick touches? There were no lines there. I need you to appreciate this. This is all stuff based on this gap right here, which was really based on this gap. Not even. It was based on this gap cut up 4 times. And it's providing above the last known line rejection points all along the way. So, in theory, these are places, Jim, that you can test for a reaction with a very small stop, knowing how big of a gap it has to move as it goes. Okay. Everybody tracking with me so far? Good. Again, if you master this, you take a giant leap forward into time with me. If you go, you're going to struggle with this idea. Let's get rid of the arrows. Boom, boom. The question almost always arises, how do I know when to stop splitting? How do I know when to stop splitting? You stop splitting when you've covered all of the available pivots, or most of the pivots involved. So let's just take a look at this from a trend standpoint. This will even frame it better. This is good stuff right here. There are gaps now that are splittable, like this one right here. And Kevin, I'm going to come in and I'm going to make it thinner. And now we'll set this as default. There's no end to the number of times you can split it. And so I'm using lighter lines to anticipate the second places that it's going to bounce at. But going back now and looking in the past at all the places this thing has just hit its head and done its craziness on. Did you know you could do any of that with your Orion tool? No. Exactly. Exactamundo. Okay, so you can do this now with any kind of tool. So, for example, I'm going to get rid of everything we did. Boom. Boom. Get rid of that crazy Orion indicator. Boom. Okay, so now I'm going to come in here. I'm going to get the tachyon warp. The time warp. Boom. And so the instrument is CL 1217. I'm going to use a higher time frame, a 60-minute signal. And let's go ahead and hit OK. Come with me and you'll be in a world of your imagination. Okay, now I'm going to come in because warp was made for a black chart with my template. I'm going to turn this to a black background with a white axis. There we go. So you guys recognize this chart right away, right? And let me try this. Oh, man. Let me close this. Quit Skype. Excuse me. Control Alt Delete. Start Task Manager. I gotta close my Skype real quick. End task. And now start. Cancel it. Start it over. Okay. So this is time warp on a 60-minute time frame. And so Jim, you see how those horizontal lines are extending forward to the right? Open price line, I'm going to make it infinite, just like we did the other one. Okay. So right here, does that look familiar? And these are 60-minute signals. Okay, so now watch this. I'm going to come here and I'm going to put a horizontal line at every one of the 60-minute lines that are based on time, right? And let me see if I can get array. for the ones that are new. Okay. So this one, okay, that's enough for now. We'll put this one down here just because it's here. Okay. So now, Jim, I'm going to take off the warp. No warp anymore, right? Let's go back and we'll put a white background with a black axis again. Okay, see those lines? Now guys, watch. I'm going to take this and bring it back to our 3-minute CL chart. Jim, do you see the kind of stuff that we were seeing with the Orion just a second ago? What do you think of that? Time has two dimensions. It is a vector. It has a vertical and it has a horizontal dimension. Those 6 laws, if you can master them, you'll make them work for you. You'll know where the pivots are most likely going to be. Okay, you almost already know, Jim, coming back into these 2 levels, what to expect. And as we move back in time, this is a 3-minute chart with 60-minute time signals. Look at where those reactions are coming in. And so one of the ways to know if a line is radioactive, if it's got the properties you're looking for, Jim, you see where all those wicks are up top? That's a hot plate and a kid touching the hot plate. Tss, ow! Tss, ow! Tss, ow! Tss, tss, ow! Tss, ow! Ow! I call them birds on a wire. They look like birds, Jim, with their tails hanging down underneath. You see how the bird is sitting on a branch right here, and those tails are hanging down? Master this technique. Use your Orion lines on different markets. Draw your stuff. Put 60-minute signals on a chart. Draw the lines. Leave them there. Go to your lower time frame. If you master this one technique, you're going to have a lot better time and you'll see way more confluence. Oh, by the way, if you see lines that are close to each other, put a band through them just to give it dimension, like that. You have confluence with multiple lines. Put a band through it. Now all of a sudden that looks a lot better, doesn't it? Okay. There's the next 2 lines underneath us. We can already do that and see. All right. I'll post this junk to YouTube. If you have any questions, ping me. It'll be up later today. Let me hit stop.